Our next speaker today is Taylor Mogg. She is the Senior Policy Manager at Jobs for the Future. She'll be speaking today on the current state of youth employment as we transition into a post-COVID economy in Wisconsin and across the country. Taylor will discuss some of the lessons learned, the common challenges, and some of the positive outcomes, as well as future opportunities related to education, workforce, and career pathway adjustments in a post-pandemic work environment. Taylor Mogg is an Associate Director for the JFF Policy Office in Washington, D.C. She assists in the development and implementation of JFF's federal and state workforce policy agenda, focusing on the intersection of post-secondary education, workforce development, and poverty alleviation programs through research, advocacy, and policy analysis. And with that, Taylor, I'll give you the floor.
Thanks, Jeff. And thank you, Workforce Development Board of South Central Wisconsin, for having me. And Matt, that was honestly, you provided so much information. Some of my first couple slides will be a little repetitive, but I'm just going to build on everything that you said and talk about, like Jeff mentioned, some key federal opportunities that you all should be aware of as you undergo your efforts in the next couple months and then years to come. So I'm here to provide more of a national look at youth employment, looking at today's data and what federal policymakers are doing to respond. And thank you, Jeff, for the wonderful introduction. But yes, I am Taylor Mogg, and I am with JFF. So just really quick with my half hour with you all, quickly going to set the stage of where we are today, talk about some key policy considerations that you all are probably already thinking about as it comes to serving youth populations in your community, and then kind of ending with some federal opportunities you all should be aware of related to just policy changes as well as funding. And then hopefully we'll have some time for questions. So like Jeff said, put them in the chat or save them for me at the end. Great. So Matt went into way more detail on this, but I just wanted to provide like a quick high level overview of where we are right now. So youth unemployment at the end of June nationally was at around 9.3%. This is a very welcome decline from the high of the 20.5% that we saw in the peak of the pandemic in June 2020, so just a year ago. Just for reference to show how drastic this was and how this pandemic specifically just disproportionately affected youth populations, was that youth unemployment rate peaked at 14.7 in 2010 after the Great Recession. So this even was worse than before. However, while we are welcoming this decline, and to Matt's, I think this really summarizes what Matt was trying to say in his presentation, that even though we are seeing a decline in youth unemployment and increase in participation in the labor market, it is still higher than national unemployment rate of 5.9%, just demonstrating that youth are having a hard time re-entering the workforce than other populations and age groups. And I have links to that data. It's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics as well as Statistica, and I can leave that in the chat when I'm done, if you all want to take a deeper look. Just some more national data to continue. So I know we're talking about kind of youth more generally, but I think it's worth noting that the youth that are most hurt by this pandemic especially are those that are disconnected, so they are not in school or in work at this time. According to data from Measure of America, the COVID-19 pandemic caused youth disconnection rates to spike dramatically. They estimated that in May of 2020, as many as 9 million young people were out of school and out of work across the country, which was 2 times more than the year prior. By the end of the year, the total number of disconnected youth did decline, with settled around roughly 6 million. So this just further proves that by the increased disruption from the pandemic, also moving to virtual services and lack of technology and broadband, which Matt also mentioned, it placed a lot of youth and young people behind, whether that was in school or in work. So quickly too, setting the stage on federal investment of like how the federal government and policy has supported youth to date. Even prior to the pandemic, before we needed more support than ever before, federal investment in youth programming has been declining since its peak in the late 1970s. So additionally, specifically for youth that are disconnected from school and work, there are really few federal programs that really target this population, aside from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, which I know you all are very much aware of. But even so, with WIOA, youth spending totaled only about $913 million in FY20, and then it only served around 150,000 young people. So just to say that definitely need for some federal investment and federal targeting and programming to serve these populations, especially today when we know that they are really hurting and getting back to work and also continuing in their educational pathways after the pandemic. So, my kind of just final thought on setting the stage is it's really critical to leverage other federal programs that do have some increased flexibility, like Perkins 5 or CTE legislation, because there are abilities for communities and states to put resources towards better serving youth populations in specific career fields. But again, that's really dependent on the state and community. And so there's not really like a general status quo happening around the nation. So just to flag that for you all working in your community, that there are opportunities, which I know you all are doing anyway. And then again, just reiterating that partnering across systems and with business to ensure youth have high quality skill development and career opportunities is so critical during this time. So what are some key policy considerations to think about as we serve the youth and young adult population? So at JFF, our policy team has kind of created these 4 pillars for better supporting youth in a post-pandemic recovery. So one is expanding access to work-based learning and good jobs, aligning youth programming across systems and sectors, holistically supporting the needs of youth, and lastly, expanding access to high-quality skill development opportunities. So diving a little deeper on each of these pillars, I want to start off with expanding access to work-based learning and good jobs. So again, a lot of you are doing this and working to expand these opportunities for youth in your community. So just to reiterate the work you're already doing, but access to high quality on the job training is so critical for youth and young adults, not only to learn those technical skills that are associated with in-demand opportunities, but also those employability skills that really stick with a person throughout their lifetime. And so we really are promoting expanding the internships, youth apprenticeship opportunities, while also ensuring these options are more equitable. What we see a lot in our work across the country is that mostly like in school or youth that are already attached to some sort of educational programming have access to these opportunities, and those that are disconnected don't. So we're really working on expanding how we can serve out of school youth and still provide them with these high quality work-based learning opportunities to set them up for greater success in the future. Additionally, like Matt mentioned, and like I mentioned with the unemployment rates, youth are always kind of the first to go when it comes to employment when there is a crisis or an economic downturn. And so, really thinking about jobs that are available to them and also just that are good jobs available to youth that they are able to enter into as those opportunities open up. And so, as part of our work and advocacy at the federal level, we do talk a lot about subsidized jobs for youth specifically. And so like summer job programs and things like that, that can really just get individuals foot in the door. However, we have awesome businesses here. And this makes me so happy because working with employers also is critical here to ensure that they understand the value of building out the younger talent pipeline to fill those jobs in the future. So again, access to these career learning and exposure is so critical for individuals' future economic success. So that's one of our key pillars to serving this population. But outside of just like that on the job learning and exposure, we also just think general access to high quality skill development opportunities are also a critical piece to this puzzle. So we need high quality opportunities starting in secondary, but that ensure seamless transitions into post-secondary education. So students kind of don't fall out and are able to continue on their pathway. We also are really supportive of more secondary options that are career oriented. So thinking about career and technical education opportunities and pathways, as well as other opportunities for students to learn a lot about careers before they leave high school. Additionally, we look to make sure post-secondary options are also more aligned to careers while also being more flexible to meet the needs of today's students. So like Matt mentioned, the young people we're talking about and really serving at JFF usually have increased barriers than our traditional age students that are leaving high school. So they are often from lower income backgrounds, have dependents, sometimes they're already working part-time or low-wage jobs. And so really thinking about how we structure post-secondary education and these skill development opportunities to ensure they are able to persist and complete. So thinking about like more flexibility on time and maybe more of a focus on like competencies rather than assessments. So things and strategies like that. And just quickly wanted to add here too, I know we have a lot of tech ed providers on the line as well. And I also just wanted to add in that while we did see a lot of disconnection um, by moving to virtual, a lot of that was because of individuals' lack of access to technological devices and broadband. And I know the Workforce Development Board of South Central did a lot to help combat that, especially for disconnected youth populations. However, we also saw more people able to find good jobs that were fully remote, as well as make online learning kind of meet their schedules that needed to be more flexible. And so, looking ahead at policy, especially federally, where there are so many regulations and requirements around this stuff, we really think there's going to be this opportunity and probably increase in hybrid approaches where you integrate that in person with that online learning. Just to make sure that everyone's needs are being met by these educational opportunities that I'm talking about. So that's exciting and a good opportunity for the future. On that note too, thinking about the holistic needs of youth. So like I mentioned, not all youth are the same and everyone has different needs to get them prepared for work and continuing on their career pathway. And so kind of we've basically categorize this in two spaces. One is access to guidance and information around these college and career pathways opportunities, including career counseling and navigation. And JFF is a huge proponent, and I know Seth Lentz, who's on the line, we talked to you a lot about career navigation, but that we again need some hybrid approaches to that. So you have those high touch in-person points with staff who are knowledgeable about the information, but then just have more general an online platform that's more robust and really can provide individuals, especially youth, with the information they need to make strong choices for what's best for them. In addition to that, just access to basic needs. So thinking about nutrition and food, stable housing, like Matt mentioned again, childcare. We saw a lot of those barriers and those issues disrupt youth participation in the workforce over this past year. And so ensuring that along with skill development and a job, those basic needs are being met is so critical. And then lastly, can't say it enough, this is a lot to do and no one system, no one sector should be doing it alone. We really need greater alignment across partners. And this work really can't happen in silos if we want to make progress and better serve the youth across the nation and in communities. So I know you all already know that, and that's why we're all here today, but just can't hit that point home hard enough. Great. So moving on to kind of the last section, just want to flag some opportunities for you all to be thinking about today at the federal level. So first of all, the American Rescue Plan. So this was the $1.9 trillion plan that was enacted into law back in March. However, resources are still being drawn down on, and some are actually just kicking off. So I just wanted to flag some opportunities for you all to think about in your work that maybe you could work with state leaders as well as local partners like the Workforce Board to kind of draw down on some of these funds if you are eligible or interested. So first off, just want to flag that this bill really was a continuation of the previous stimulus packages that came in response to COVID. So there was a ton of funding for direct relief to support individuals during these tumultuous times. So there was enhanced food relief through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. There was the expanded child tax credit, which for low-income families, which you may have just seen, came out about a month ago. And the Biden administration was kind of reminding people that they were eligible for those programs, as well as Medicaid expansion incentives to help people who are from low-income backgrounds access the healthcare that they need during this time. Additionally, there was funding for education. We saw increased resources going towards secondary and post-secondary. Secondary was really focused on reopening schools, and then post-secondary was a continuation of the Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, which is a pretty innovative funding model that we hope will continue after we're out of this pandemic, but basically providing 50% of resources to student basic needs, which we just talked about, and then the other 50% for institutions to combat declining in resources because of enrollment numbers and to ensure that they are continuing high quality programming and skill opportunities. I do just want to flag, which is very disappointing for me, who works in federal workforce development policy, that really there has not been a ton of resources going to our nation's workforce system since the start of the pandemic, besides for some money going for dislocated workers in the beginning. And so again, the American Rescue Plan did not provide any resources specifically for the workforce system. I will add though, and I will put a link in the chat when I'm done, that I think would be very interesting to this group is, and if you may have already seen it, but the Economic Development Administration run through the Department of Commerce actually has a $3 billion funding opportunity going on right now for people and communities to apply for around like 4 or 5 different categories. The one I thought would be really this group would be really interested in the Good Jobs Initiative. And basically what it is doing is trying to figure out like what a high quality job looks like and how we determine that on the ground. And then also kind of once we get there, how do we ensure people are skilled and prepared for those positions? And so it's really promoting registered apprenticeship expansion and development, career pathways approaches, as well as sector strategies, and also has a focus on youth to ensure that we are helping those that are dislocated at this time find in demand and good jobs. So I'll put all that information in the chat if you didn't know about it already, but it's a really awesome opportunity. And while it's not coming from Department of Labor, it's still workforce development and targeted at workforce. And so we are really excited about that. I also just want to add that the ARP really provided increased resources for state and local relief and provided a lot of flexibility for state and local leaders to kind of prioritize where they want to spend these dollars. And so I would just encourage you all again to work with your local leaders as well as your state leaders to figure out kind of where that money's going, and if it hasn't been drawn down, ways that it can be used towards expanding these workforce development efforts for youth and young people in your community. So last thing here, I hope you guys thought this would be funny, but more federal action, ... hopefully, because we have an exciting couple months ahead if something happens. But basically, as you may have seen, yesterday, the Senate passed a bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is proposing creating so many new jobs and is roughly $100 trillion. And I also can provide a breakdown of where that money would be going and what industry sectors. But it's really focusing on revitalizing communities and making it about like what's in demand in communities and how they can ensure industries that are already working hard in areas to have it recover are being invested in to continue that growth. Again, though, because this was bipartisan package, they tried to keep it as like small money amounts as possible, even though it is very large. So there are actually no workforce resources proposed or any like education and training resources. So, one of our concerns is that while you're creating all these great jobs, are people going to be prepared to enter them, especially youth and young people that might need that additional assistance to get them ready for these opening opportunities? So Congress's solution is going through a budget reconciliation process, which is complicated, but why they do it is you only need a simple majority. So you just need to get like over 50 senators to say yes, and it will go through. And basically, it just also isn't creating any new programs. It's just pushing money into existing funds. So they are hoping in the fall to have a budget reconciliation bill that would be associated with infrastructure and would include President Biden's free college proposal, so allowing more young people to access higher education who have barriers and financial disruption. It also would be putting, as of now, $100 billion in the workforce system to help with more rapid reskilling and training to get people prepared for these crazy amounts of jobs that are coming out of the infrastructure package. And again, like I mentioned before, there also will be a really large focus on career and technical education. The Biden administration has really been committed to expanding CTE and STEM, starting earlier and earlier in an individual's secondary education. So as part of this reconciliation, we would probably see expanding opportunities or resources for this work as well. With that being said, while these numbers and ideas are exciting, while this is not going to be bipartisan, it would just be pushed by the Democrats. There are also obviously a lot of moderate Democrats that don't know how they feel about these large numbers in spending, especially with an infrastructure package. So these numbers will probably decline by the time, if anything, is passed. So I will keep you all posted, but as of now, these are kind of the big proposals that we are thinking we will see. And then lastly, I just want to flag WIOA reauthorization. Seth and I have also talked about this before, but I think this is a bipartisan issue. People want workforce to work. They want to get people back to work and quickly. And again, they really have this emphasis, especially on the leadership on the Hill right now, on the youth title in WIOA, not only expanding resources that are going towards the skill development of youth and connecting them to career learning opportunities, but also figuring out like how the money breaks down in communities based on demographics and age and in school versus out of school population. And so there's going to be, I think, a lot of changes there, which will be exciting and hopefully helpful to you all in your work ahead. There also will just be generally, hopefully, increased resources for training through a WIOA reauthorization. And then lastly, a huge, huge focus on career pathways approaches and sector strategies. So really incentivizing, like you all are doing, the strong partnership with business, ensuring employers and in-demand businesses in the regions can come together to ensure that they get the talent they need to succeed. So we're really excited about this opportunity. Seems like there's strong bipartisan support. It's just they've got a lot of other stuff going on. So that WIOA reauthorization would probably be pushed to prioritize, obviously, infrastructure and a budget reconciliation bill. So I know that was a lot of like federal policy lingo and updates, but I hope it is helpful and hopefully it makes you all feel positive about the future, that you could potentially draw down on more federal resources to support the great work you're doing.